Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of fun releases, from deck build packs to anime import sets, but one of the best has got to be Structure Decks. While a boring one can fly right under the radar like a bird with a degree in limbo, interesting ones are a point of celebration, as they can lead to some powerful budget brews that are highly accessible. And as part of the ReStructure series, we've got some spicy new critters that promise to be just that. Premiering in the aptly named February 2013 Structure Deck, Onslaught of the Fire Kings, this archetype is a series of blazing beasts that are at war with the Atlanteans, thus further widening the divide between fire and water that began all the way back in 1996 when Pokemon first came out. But the sins Blastoise committed against Charizard are gonna have to wait. We have something much more important to talk about, a theme that codified one of the most important, pervasive mechanics that still crops up in the game from time to time. So let's fire up these slides to see what kind of creatures are featured here, see how one passes the torch to the other, then find out if there are any tourists looking for some prime real estate. It's time to destroy all expectations with Fire King Explained. So what's the deal with Fire Kings? Well, they're a series of fire attribute monsters spanning what would become the traditional tri-types: Beast, Beast Warrior, and Winged Beast. Aesthetically, they're all based on mythical creatures from Hindu and Buddhist mythology, largely from an Indonesian lens. Hey, on a related note, did you know that Emony does a lot of lore posts on Twitter? They're very cool. Mechanically, the theme was one of the first to really embrace the idea of destroying its own cards for value. While they wouldn't be the first to do that, Nephthys would be the first big example, Fire King is the first entire archetype to really embrace it. In fact, one of the theme's boss monsters is basically a Nephthys knockoff with the serial numbers filed off, though since the two tend to run in the same decks, I guess there isn't any hard feelings. First up, we have a very tiny newcomer, True Fire King Ponix, a level 1 winged beast monster with 500 attack and 200 defense. If any number of your monsters whose original attributes are fire are destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Fire King spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. And during the next standby phase, after this card was destroyed and sent to the grave, add this card from your grave to your hand. And that's fantastic, because we've actually got a spell coming up that features this exact monster that works really well with it. It's always fun to see Legacy support bring previously unused monsters into the fold. And it certainly helps that it's such a good card too, because we have some choice spells and traps to choose from. So having a monster that not only grabs it, but can easily recycle itself so you can keep doing it turn after turn is amazing. Careful with that name though, without the fire in there, I know a few giant worm monsters that also love destroying their own cards who would love to have a chat, and they do not run in very nice circles of the Fire King. Next up, we have our mid-range group of monsters that help keep things going, our Fire King avatars. They make up our level 3 and 4 slots, and all share an effect. If a face-up Fire King monster you control is destroyed by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. Well, all of them have the effect except one, but we'll point that out when it happens. This is very useful for getting our little gremlins into rotation, and while they don't really have any on-field effects they can leverage, they still make for great material, and it's way easier for your opponent to destroy them once they're out of your hand. First up is Fire King Avatar Garunix, a level 3 winged beast monster with 700 attack and 1700 defense. And if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to your grave, you can special summon a Fire King Avatar monster from your deck. It basically just floats into another of your little beasties, but sadly you can't do it on your own accord. This one has to be destroyed by your opponent. You can run this into your opponent's monster to trigger it, but at 700 that's going to cause you quite a bit of pain. So depending on your priorities, you might just have to Garunix this from your deck list. Fire King Avatar Kirin is a level 3 beast monster with 1000 attack and 200 defense. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can send a fire monster from your deck to the grave. Thankfully, you can initiate this one on your own, and setting up your grave is no small help. We have some pretty snazzy graveyard revival options, and the fact that this can combo with any fire monster we tech in is smashing. I also really dig the fashion design here. Green is an often overlooked flame color, but gives a very strong otherworldly feel, which is slightly undercut by Kirin here, looking like they have a little shit-eating grin going on, and honestly, I love it. Fire King Avatar Arvada is a level 4 Beast Warrior monster who does not have the usual Fire King Avatar effect, which is wild because this one does have a very good on-field effect. When a monster effect is activated while this monster is on the field as a quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy one other fire monster in your hand or on your field. If this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target a Fire Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monster in your grave, except a copy of this card, and special summon it, but it has its effects negated. Also, it's destroyed during the end phase. So yeah, this card is just amazing all around. It's monster effect negation that triggers your Fire King effects, or any other fire monster that benefits from being destroyed, and it can also float into other fire tri-types, regardless of level. So you can get back some ridiculous monsters, even if their effects are negated. So this goes a long way towards giving you more reasons to be wary when pink elephants are on parade. Fire King Avatar Barong is a level 4 Beast Warrior monster with 1800 attack and 200 defense, and during the next standby phase after this card was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, add a Fire King card from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. So we've got a bit of a delay on that search, but it is still a powerful one, since this can grab you any on-theme card, be it monster, spell, or trap. It's also got a very nice stat line for a level 4 monster, so it's decent at putting up an offensive. Just, you know, for the love of God, do not forget that search. I've been a BA stan for almost a decade, and I still have trouble with those SCARM searches. Fire King Avatar Hanuman is a level 4 Beast Warrior monster with 1600 attack and 200 defense, and has a similar effect to Arvada, though it negates spell and trap card or effect activations. And while it doesn't have Arvada's floating effect, it does have the usual Fire King Avatar effect that gets it out of your hand, which is very nice. This is the perfect complement to Arvada, as it covers what we normally can't protect against, and while opposing Raigekis and Lightning Storms are welcome, evenly matched is another matter entirely. When it comes to dealing with those, this is just the right Hanuman for the job. Fire King Avatar Yaksha is a level 4 Beast Warrior monster with 1800 attack and 200 defense, and if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can destroy a card in your hand or that you control. Now that seems a little bare bones as far as effects go, but this is the first one so far that actually jumpstarts our engine, and doing it for in-hand cards not only gets us off to the races sooner, it also gets cards that would be a pain to get into rotation that much easier. Having an effect dedicated to destroying your own cards might not go over well in some themes, but that's just the kind of rapport Fire Kings have with each other. It's an entire friend group of people who insult each other on the regular, but still drop everything if need be to help move furniture. It's honestly kinda heartwarming. That does it for our avatars. Now it's time for the One Piece references, because these ones are gonna get much higher. Fire King High Avatar Garunix is a level 8 winged beast monster with 2700 attack and 1700 defense, and during the next standby phase after this card was destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, special summon this card from the grave. When you do, destroy all other monsters on the field, and when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can special summon a Fire King monster from your deck, except a copy of this card. Now, normally I'd be upset that we have a card with an on-battle destruction trigger, but since it already has an effect that triggers after being destroyed by a card effect, I'll let it slide. And what an effect it is, basically acting as a dark hole that clears out your opponent's board and enables your own. Heck, if you can get 2 of these into rotation, you can enact a kind of scorched earth policy of always having a board wipe every turn to force your opponent to keep re-establishing their setup, and that's pretty keen. Not to mention that it has great synergy with Nephthys, like we were saying, as this will also keep proccing its own revival effect, which means you're also dealing with your opponent's back row. This is a fantastic boss monster, and things only get better from here with the new releases, which is really saying something. It is, after all, a high avatar, so the bar is already set pretty far up. Fire King High Avatar Kirin is a level 8 beast monster with 2400 attack and 200 defense, and during the main phase, if this card is in your hand as a quick effect, you can destroy one other fire monster in your hand or on your side of the field face up, and if you do, special summon this card. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon a Fire King monster from your hand or grave, except a copy of this card, then you can destroy a card on the field. Now this is what I call legacy support. It's ready to pop any of your other fires on demand to get their effects active, and if it's destroyed by anything, you get to replace it with any Fire King, no matter the level, and lets you pop a card on the field, either yours or your opponent's, making it an enabler or a Retaliator. So if you can find ways to recycle this back into your hand for later, you're basically set for life. Now I see why the base form was having so much fun. It saw what was in the works and knew it was gonna absolutely run the show. Truly iconic behavior. Sacred Fire King Garunix is a level 8 winged beast monster with 2700 attack and 1700 defense, and if any number of your monsters whose original attribute is fire are destroyed by battle or card effect, if it was there when the monster was destroyed, or from the hand, even if it wasn't. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can destroy a fire beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster in your hand, deck, or face-up field except a copy of this card, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to half the attack the destroyed monster had until the end of the turn. Now this is a wild monster. It works perfectly well with High Avatar Garunix, giving you a bit of board presence even after you wipe the board. Then it gets even bigger by destroying basically any on-theme monster anywhere, enabling their effects. Heck, you could easily close the game out with that effect alone. If High Avatar is summoned and destroys a fire monster, you get Sacred Fire King Garunix into play, putting 5400 points of damage on board. Then, using its on-summon effect, you can destroy High Avatar Kirin from your deck, boosting your damage by 1200, which also enables Kirin's effect, allowing you to revive the monster the first Garunix destroyed that got this all started. So as long as that monster has 1400 attack or more, that's 8000 damage. This is going to be an important monster in the theme moving forward, in even more ways than just the OTK potential, meaning that Sacred title is very apt, since it's got me saying, holy cows! Except a bird version of that. Our last monster is also the theme's first extra deck offering, Fire King Deity Garunix Eternity, a rank 8, Pyro monster with 3000 attack and 2000 defense, requiring 2 or more level 8 monsters as material. If this card is Xyz summoned, you can destroy all other monsters on the field. You can also detach a material from this card, then target a spell or trap card on the field and destroy it, and if you do, this card gains 500 attack. And if this card with material is destroyed, you can special summon Fire King monsters from your grave up to the number of materials this card had. While the type swerve is a little strange, it doesn't actually affect anything about our theme that much. If anything, it's just another feather in Pyro Enjoyer's caps, which is really great because they've been having an awesome year so far. In general, this will see play in any rank 8 deck as a way to wipe the board while providing back row removal, which gets even better in our theme thanks to that floating effect, essentially letting us get back all the material we used for it as long as we don't spend any. Though even just getting back one Sacred Garunix is pretty good. And you know, personally, I'm gonna be super annoying about this card, because this new Garunix shares a lot of design space, both visually and mechanically, with Hazy Flames. I mean, it's a Pyro Xyz that thrives on having multiple material, it has some bright pastel fire that's hidden among the glorious golden gouts of flames. I'm on to you, designers, don't think you can keep lore hidden from me! Alright, that's all the monsters, now it's time for the spells and traps. Onslaught of the Fire King is a normal spell card that you can only activate if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters. Special summon a Fire Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monster from your deck. Its effects are negated, also it's destroyed during the end phase. This can grab any member of the theme, but let's be real here, the big target is going to be High Avatar Garunix. You get a big body, and when it self-destructs, it just starts that cycle. The Sacred Garunix is also a nice summon to get it into rotation, but remember that its effects will be negated, so you won't be able to foolish destroy one of your Fire Kings. Yet. But this card also has a strange amount of splash ability. For instance, you can run this in Tri-Brigade to get Kit onto the board to start your link climbing. And speaking from personal experience, this was basically a Hero Lives for Gladiator Beasts, getting you a Laquari to summon alongside your Bestiari to turbo out Geyseris. This is a pretty fantastic card despite its seemingly narrow pool of options, so it's really easy to go off with Onslaught. Circle of the Fire Kings is a quick play spell card that targets a fire monster you control and a fire monster in your grave. You destroy the monster you control, and if you do, special summon the other monster from your grave. This is that sweet card I said you could grab off of Ponix, and it does not disappoint. Beforehand, it was still a great way to trigger any on-destruction effects while reviving your bigger threats. But with Ponix, you can do that now, but better. Simply wait for another fire monster to get destroyed, Ponix will then get summoned from your hand, giving you that search. And now, you can destroy Ponix for any other fire monster in your grave. And during the next standby phase, you get this card back into your hand to do it all over again. It's also an incredible card when it comes to enabling OTKs, because once you've exhausted all of your attacks, just use Circle to cycle into another monster to get you that last bit of damage. This card has been a huge help in the theme, so it's great to see that with the release of Ponix, it's all come around full circle. Fire King Sacred Immolation is a quick play spell card that targets the same number of Fire King monsters you control and cards your opponent controls and destroys them. And if any number of Fire King cards you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your grave instead. But you can only use one effect of this card per turn and only once per turn. So no targeting your whole field with one immolation only to protect it with the other copy in grave maneuver. At first, I wasn't too jazzed about this card. After all, Fire Kings already have destruction effects down pat, so I don't see why we would need any more of them. But with the inclusion of Ponyx, letting you grab this whenever you need it, I suppose it's a helpful piece of removal that can also act as an enabler if need be. But until the Atlantean ReStructure Deck comes out, we can call this one pretty decisively for the Fire Kings. I have no idea how Poseidra gets out of this one. They are looking cooked. Fire King Island is a field spell card, and if this face-up card in the field zone is sent to the grave or is banished, destroy all monsters you control. And you can use one of these following effects per turn, and only once per turn. You can either, during your main phase, destroy a monster in your hand or you control, and if you do, add a Fire King monster from your deck to your hand, or if you control no monsters, special summon a Fire Winged Beast monster from your hand. Once again, the higher Garunix forms being the target audience for this effect. But that doesn't mean that other effect isn't half bad. Being able to destroy a Fire King in hand to essentially swap it out for another is fantastic, no two ways about it. The self-destruct effect, on the other hand, is a bit polarizing. True, it will enable all of your Fire King effects that trigger on destruction, but because it's mandatory, you don't actually have any control over when that happens, meaning your opponent could wait until you've exhausted your resources, pop your island, and now you have to wait for a later turn to close things out. But if any deck could somehow leverage that effect, it's this one. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't share that this also saw some fringe play in Cosmos for a while, letting you pop your ships in hand to get their floating effects online, while getting you a little level 3 bird for your troubles to use for whatever extra deck shenanigans you wanted. It's a really snazzy card with a couple of weird quirks to it, but every time I see it, I just think of Amazing Island. Do we have any Amazing Island heads in the audience? Sanctuary of the Fire Kings is a continuous spell card, and when activated, you can place a Fire King Island from your deck face up in your field zone. And once per turn, if a card in your field zone would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy a fire monster in your hand or face up field instead. And once per turn, if your opponent special summons any number of monsters, you can, immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon a Fire Xyz monster using only Fire King monsters you control as material. So Sanctuary helps to get Island online while keeping the downsides to a minimum. Now, instead of losing your entire setup, you can choose to just destroy one monster, which is vastly more flexible. It also essentially lets you use Eternity Garunix as a surprise board wipe. Just make sure you have 2 level 8 monsters, and if your opponent special summons a monster, you can make Eternity Garunix out of nowhere and punish them for their heresy. Technically, you can make any Fire Xyz monster in the game, but I doubt anyone is looking to surprise their opponent with Grenosaurus. Overall, this is a solid card that succeeds in bringing an older card up to modern standards. Just be careful where you step, because much like that old childhood game, the floor here is lava. Our last card is Solidarity Strike of the Fire Kings, a normal trap card that special summons a Fire Beast Warrior, and Fire Winged Beast monster, with one needing to come from your hand, one from the deck, and one from the grave, but negate their effects and destroy them during the end phase. You can also banish this card from your grave, and this turn, your opponent can't activate cards or effects when your Fire King monsters are normal or special summoned. This one feels like a bit too much. While having one of your Fire Kings in the deck is a gimme, needing to have one in your hand that's also a different type than one in your grave is a bit too much setup than I like, especially on a slower card like this. The grave effect is nice, but doesn't provide enough comprehensive protection to really feel worth running. Maybe some other fire tri-type theme will come around and make good use of this, but right now I have to give it a pass, which is a real shame because with all the strikes going around, I really want to show some solidarity, but I guess with all the different types in the deck, that's gonna be an impossible effect to use. Alright, so that's all the Fire King cards, but what do we do with them? Well, it's time for another round of blowing stuff up for value. We want to establish a cycle that gets high Avatar Garunix and Guest Fire King Nephthys into rotation so our opponent doesn't have any options, and from there we just steamroll the opposition. What we're gonna need are good fire enablers and some tools to keep our opponent from messing with our plans. So what can we play to help them out? Well, with all the level 4 Beast Warrior warriors we have access to, Fire Formation Tenki is a shoo-in. Not only can we get our hands on Arvada, Hanuman, and Barong, they also get a little extra boost to make them even more formidable in battle. You could also run copies of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear and Gorilla, but that might be a bit too 2013 to be practical. Since we have so many tri-types in rotation already, including Tri-Brigades might not actually be a bad idea. Shrag adds some non-targeting banishing removal, which is great for clearing out some rough threats, and when it inevitably gets destroyed by Garunix, you can leverage all those banished Fire Kings into a search. Heck, if you're worried about losing those banished monsters forever, just run Tri-Brigade Revolt and you'll be good to go. If you want more bodies that can blow up your Fire Kings, there are a few big ones that give us some wicked value. Goka, the Pyre of Malice, is a free summon so long as you have a fire monster to pop after it's summoned, and generates you a free token every turn. Bonfire Colossus is a level 8 monster, which means it makes for great material for our Xyz, that pops 2 fire monsters when summoned, but probably the most impactful is True King Agni Mazud. This can pop your monsters in the hand or on the field, and it comes with a non-targeting banish of an opponent's monster, whether it be on the field or in their graveyard. And if you have any worms you want to run, that's more value you get out of this card, so feel free to splash in something really funky. With a lot of our fire monsters having 200 defense, Rekindling makes for a great soul charge. Whether we use them as Xyz or link material, this is a great way to flood our field with materials that we can leverage to win games. Another great piece of generic fire support is Blaster, Dragon Ruler of Infernos. While in hand, it's some reliable spot removal, and on future turns it's a gigantic body, all at the cost of 2 fire monsters getting banished. As for a silly tech pick, how about giving Metal Foes a try? They're also fire, and they love destroying your cards for value. It makes running Nephthys a tad bit riskier since it'll blow up your scales, but having access to a draw engine via fusion, as well as the wealth of fusion options, is a great way to round out your usually light the fuse and see what happens style of play. Alright, that's my thoughts on Fire Kings, but how does it stack up against the Nova scale? Novelty. Before Fire Kings, the idea of destroying your own cards for value seemed patently absurd, but now it feels like we can't go a year of releases without this mechanic cropping up in some form or another. And on top of that, it was also one of the early themes that brought us the Beast, Beast Warrior, Winged Beast triad. Fire Kings blazed a trail to a lot of iconic Yu-Gi-Oh tropes, so for that, Fire Kings get an easy 5 in novelty. Objectivity. While the ability to crack open a field turn after turn sounds powerful, it's also slow and very telegraphed. With Graveyard Hate becoming more and more accessible, it's become harder and harder to rely on Garunix as a win condition. New cards like Sacred Garunix do help add some speed to the formula, but trades away raw removal for that speed, though the new Xyz does do a lot to help with this. So while the new cards aren't a known quantity yet, I'm gonna give them a 4 in objectivity, as I'm sure this pile is rife with combo potential. Versatility. While fire isn't exactly a prominent attribute, just look at the legendary duelist set to see how far they had to bend over backwards to get a full set of 3, it's not without its strong inclusions. Combine that with other themes that like having their cards destroyed and their inclusion of tri-types, and I'm confident giving Fire Kings the middle of the road 3 rating in versatility. Awesomeness. I was never a big Fire King pilot when these cards were big, and while I appreciate them for what they've done for the game, as well as how they helped my sweet Gladiator beasts, I'm not too personally attached to them. The new cards are pretty sweet insofar as how they've brought Fire Kings into the modern era, but does little to spice up its already established formula, and opts to essentially remaster the old classics. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does leave it feeling kinda bland, meaning Fire Kings get a 3 in awesomeness as well. This brings Fire Kings to a respectable 15 out of 20 on the Nova scale. And that's all I have to say about Fire King. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how the new cards shake things up, because while I do feel that the new cards just put a new coat of paint on an old archetype more than anything else, it does so in a way that actually fixes some of their older problems. It just remains to be seen if this will be enough to light a fiery passion in the fan base, or if it'll just end up being a misfire. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Fire Kings getting the royal treatment, or are their plans about to go up in smoke? And which one's your favorite? I'm really liking Hanuman's vibe personally. Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out.
Today's episode was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. When you want to protect your cards with the power of dragon scales, get some sweet lore for them, and support the channel, check out my link in the description description to get started.
Today's episode is also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including the illustrious Quasar Commander Green Knight, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Danny Bound, Dark Dragon X830, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Genesis Yugioh, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Hydracraft 135, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Marluxia Zagirl, Mega Combi, Molly Renata, Nathan Vig, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Skybuster Leo, Sophie, apparently, The Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Beluga Masta, Blue Gem, Chaz Ghost, Corbinisms, Drachenwald, Drake and SpongeBob be like, you used to call me on your shell phone, Dripfed Tar, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla,
Hike Boyagian,
Herbal D, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Carp, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Ruxith Sarani, Shizuka Nijimura, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn, Venusian Teapot, and Zeldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to be a part of these credits, get early access to videos, determine what videos I make, and many more benefits, it would mean the world to me if you check my Patreon page in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another archetype that prominently features a giant exploding fire chicken, check out this video I made covering Nephthys. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.